I need you to talk to me, Sophia, about what are you hearing about jobs to be done? Like, what has been in your mind? What's made you pause and like cringe up when you're hearing what people are doing with jobs to be done?
Yep. So I started hearing recently and in the past couple of years, some things that were just like confusing for me. Like, wait a second, that's not what I thought jobs to be done was when I first learned about it. Like in the early 2000s, I was learning about jobs to be done. And what I started hearing people say is like, okay, well, we need to figure out what the job of the user is. Like, what do they need to do? What is their job? What is the job that they need to be done? Right? And I'm like, cool. Okay. Yeah, that seems like something really valuable. What's the job of the user? It's an interesting way to think about what they need to do. And then I would hear them like actually go into like the tasks that they would need to do and like the subtasks that they would need to do.
The tasks to complete that job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it seemed a whole lot like task analysis. And there's the problem that I am seeing and how I learned about jobs to be done and how I interpret the original intent from Clayton Christensen about like his original theory from the 90s of jobs to be done is that the customer / end user is not the job performer. They are the hiring manager.
Okay, wait, back up. Explain that. Yeah, what's the difference? Hiring manager, job performer.
Okay, so like this is how I'm hearing about it in the UX world is that there's the job performer. And like that you can kind of think about as the customer or the end user is they are performing jobs. They're performing.
They're completing tasks.
They're completing tasks, right? And what we can do using jobs to be done is we can really break down the tasks that they're doing. So it does feel very much like task analysis. And you've like been dabbling in this and realizing that like that's a little bit where wires are crossing, right? Where people are like, I don't know, like how is this different than task analysis? Are you hearing that?
I'm hearing that. Yes. A lot of UX designers there's overlap. There's overlap with a lot of jobs to be done and other things I've heard like user stories, personas, but particularly tasks and getting down to being really definitive about like how you complete those tasks in the end product and solution, which it's a whole different thing because that's not how I thought jobs to be done was the focus of it.
Yeah. And there's like, so there's some really cool stuff and still in like what I am hearing and like basically the UX industry's interpretation of jobs to be done is there's some really beautiful things in there. Like let's separate from the solution. Let's really think about the problem, not think about the tasks that somebody needs to perform like in your specific solution. Like, like actually, storyboarding all the things that they go through when they're using your solution, but like really think about the problem space. So zooming out to the problem space, what are the things that need to happen to get this thing done, to complete this job, right? Which is great, right? I think even Jim Callback talks about like thinking who wrote the Jobs to be Done playbook and talking about like, okay, let's really think about like what would this job have looked like 50 years ago? So really being agnostic of the technology and of those technology solutions, which is cool.
Which also I found to be really related to OUX. Like how you, like thinking about OUX is really agnostic of it's understanding the objects in the domain outside of an interface. Like it doesn't have to be or a solution or a product.
Yes, totally. Like when I heard Jim Callback say that on the podcast, I was like, yes, because I've even said that before too. It's like the objects in your domain, like that's what's so cool about OUX is because the objects in your domain, object-oriented UX, for those that are new to the channel. Hi, I'm Sophia.
Hi, I'm Allie.
Hi, welcome. So in object-oriented UX, we think about like, okay, the objects in your domain, like do not change quickly. Like they're likely were the same objects 50 years ago and might even be the same exact objects 50 years from now. So if you create solutions based on those objects, they are very sustainable and future proofed, right? Because the objects don't really change. Domains change really, really slow. So we are thinking about like that technology agnostic perspective, like totally on board. But let's go back to this, like the user is the job performer or the hiring manager?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the crux of where I think we're getting it wrong, and how if we tweak our thinking about jobs to be done just a little bit, it like becomes so much more useful for us. It becomes more useful in competitive analysis. It becomes more useful in innovation, and it becomes more useful in just like, there was another one that I had thought, but just like competitive analysis
and understanding.
Yes,
Like,
and understanding.
I mean, that's like one of the main goals. I think I really was attracted to was just how it can allow you to understand the motivations of people and what they need from it. And yeah.
There's something that's so beautifully human-centered that's not getting into demographics. It's like, let's really think about our user based on their needs. Like, of course we want this.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
It's great. Okay. But here's what we think we're missing. So going back, let's talk about the original theory, and the milkshake study. All right. So we have to talk about the milkshake study, and because this gives us a very, very good example of like where the UX industry, I think we're missing it a little bit. So Clayton Christensen talks about this milkshake study that was done with McDonald's, one of his clients. And what they were doing is they were trying to sell more milkshakes. So the thing that they tweaked is they started to realize that somebody comes in and they actually hire that milkshake for something. And like, what do they hire the milkshake for? So they changed their language a little bit to start really thinking like, this milkshake has a job. And like, what job is the milkshake actually doing for the user? So this is the customer walking into McDonald's is not the one doing the job. The customer is looking for a solution to hire.
So they're the hiring manager.
They're the hiring manager. Yes. And what they realized through like talking to them is the job that the hiring manager, the customer, was trying to fulfill, had a job opening for, wasn't actually what they thought. All right. It wasn't like, oh, I just want like a sweet treat to like, feel really, feel like I'm like treating myself or something like that.
Yes.
The job was they had a long commute. Like half of the milkshakes were sold before 8:30 in the morning. Wow. Good to know. And then when they really started digging into it, they were like, people have a long commute in the car, and they wanted something to literally entertain them on their long commute and also still be satisfied at 10 a.m. So they needed satiety, and they wanted something that they could engage with in the car on their commute, and that wasn't going to make a mess, and that actually took a long time to consume. So that's when they would say, I've done, and then they kind of like trained the users to use this language, and somebody was like, yeah, one time I hired a banana, and that was a mistake. Because it went by so fast, and then they were hungry like an hour later.
I feel that with bananas. I
know. They're just gone, right? And like, but they still had some pieces of it. They didn't make a mess. They were good with one hand, right? Like once you actually open it up, they're good with one hand. Or like, one time I hired a Snickers bar for this job, but I felt really guilty afterward, and I still was kind of hungry. Or I've also hired donuts for this job, or bagels for this job, but the bagels take two hands and they make a mess. Yeah. So really understanding the job requirements, right?
I love that, the job requirements.
The job rec, basically. So you are a hiring manager and you have a job rec, and you're looking for a solution that's going to fill that as best as possible. And we can totally flip the script there and think about like, okay, what are our milkshakes? That is the O of Orca. What are our objects? What are the things that users are actually coming for? Ooh. So, right, like you're not going into McDonald's for the tables and the chairs. I mean, that's cool that they have them, but like, or, to talk to a cashier, you're going for the milkshakes and the burgers and the fries, right? So we can say like, what are people actually coming for? What are our milkshakes and our burgers and fries? And then we can ask the really interesting question of, what are our competitors? Okay, what is competing with the milkshake? Because what Clayton Christensen and his team found out is like, the competitor isn't the Burger King milkshake. Like, yeah, okay, it's the Burger King milkshake, but it is also bananas and coffee and donuts. And then when they really get clear on the job rec, then they can actually change the product in a way that fulfills that job rec even better. They can make the milkshake more viscous, so it takes a little bit longer to consume. They can actually make it something they know that's like an on the way to work thing. They can make it easier to order a milkshake. So they actually, one thing that they did is they made it faster to get the milkshake. So you can run into the McDonald's, the milkshakes are already, I think they were like in the 90s, like pre-making them. They would already have some ready. So they could just like very, very quickly grab and go with their milkshake. Then that competed against some other things that took a lot longer to order. So because they understood the assignment, right? That they were actually trying, that the hiring manager, the customer was trying to fulfill. So what we can do is we can say, what are our milkshakes? And what are the job requirements that our hiring managers are wanting of that? And what are the hidden competitors that maybe we're not actually thinking of?
I'm almost like picturing, and maybe you have this in your mind too, but like a matrix of some sort. Like I'm trying to figure out how it fits in with our object map or even the CTA matrix or the object guide. Like, where do these questions come up? And also, when can this happen? Like, when should someone start thinking about this? Because a lot of jobs to be done, this is just another side note of what I've been hearing, is that while good in early like product development or like when you're ideating a solution, but it seems to fall short when you get later on into the like actual development and design of something, because these job to be done statements feel, again, they're supposed to be like separate from the solution. Like it's not giving you guidelines on what to design or what to put on the page or what it should look like. Is struggles that it feels like maybe a lot of more junior designers are having, like how to fit this in. And I'm wondering like, okay, a lot of questions there for you, Sophia, but like where does it fit in? And also like in our OUX practice, like where it fits in.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I think is so cool. Like it just neatly slots into OUX. So you can think about it like, okay, in the beginning, when we're just thinking like, what are the objects? Like what the hell are even the milkshakes? Like, I don't even know what the milkshakes are. That should be at the beginning of the process. Is like,
yes.
Are we selling milkshakes or are we selling power bowls? Like, what are we actually selling here? Like, okay, we're McDonald's. We're selling freaking milkshakes. All right. So we know that we're selling milkshakes. So understanding what the things are is like the first thing. And then we can start asking the question, just asking the question, and even just recognizing our assumptions like, okay, why would somebody hire this thing? So let's do an example. So I'll just piggyback on Jim Callback's example that he uses in his book, The Jobs to Be Done Playbook, which I recommend. It's good. Like his methodology is awesome for thinking about the user as the job performer. And there's nothing that needs to go away here. I just think we can go so much deeper when we think about the object as the job performer. All right. And the user as the hiring manager that can hire lots of different things. And you want your milkshakes to get hired, right? So we can start saying, so in his example, right? So so he talks about a conference. So, and when he's talking about it, this is all well and good. He starts saying like, okay, so if the product, so I'm a conference organizer, right? And I think about conference attendees as the job performer, I start thinking about all the things that a conference attendee needs to do. Okay. So they need to decide on what conference they're going to go to. Then they need to book their travel to the conference. They need to book their lodging. They need to maybe even decide which talks they're going to go to. They need to capture the information from the talks and then maybe even share the information out to their colleagues when they get back. Okay. Feels very like storyboardy task flow. Now it's not getting into the solution yet. We're not thinking about buttons clicking and like where in the navigation, which I love. It is that like high level. Okay. Like it feels a little bit like journey mapping kind of too, which is maybe another thing that's like, it's just a journey. So instead, like, and that is good and valuable. And if Jobs to Be Done helps with that to figure out like what all those steps are and how does somebody need to move through this, then like amazing. But what I would suggest is to think about, okay, as a conference organizer, what are my milkshakes? So what are the things when you go to a conference, Allie, that you're like coming for?
I mean, like the expertise. I'm coming there for new ideas. I'm coming there for, I don't know, I'm just listing things, like connecting with people. Again, like the people there,
Yes.
you know?
The people there. So when I did this, like new ideas, so that's probably going to be encapsulated in conference talks,
Yes.
workshops, the other attendees, the speakers, maybe even other events like networking events. Like those are the milkshakes of a conference, right? Like those are the things that you are consuming as a conference attendee. So we can think now of like the potential conference attendee is actually a hiring manager, and they hire the conference, and then we can break it down even further. Like within the conference, we're hiring, okay, like, I'm not just hiring McDonald's, I'm hiring the milkshake, right? I'm not just hiring this conference, I'm hiring conference talks and events and other attendees that I might network with and get new ideas from, right? But then I can start thinking about, okay, so a conference talk, what is the job rec of the conference talk? Okay, it's to potentially, depending on the type of conference, it's to inspire, it's to give actionable, cutting edge new skills so that when you go back, you just feel like you're on the cutting edge of your industry, right? That's a lot of things I think you go to a conference specifically for, because you think you're going to see like the new stuff, right? The newest stuff within your industry. And you're also going to exchange ideas with other people, with other speakers, other attendees, potentially even vendors is a thing too. Like, like what other vendors might be there? That's really secondary or tertiary for me personally, but that might be another thing. So now I can see like, what is the job rec of a conference talk? And then I can get into a really interesting competitive analysis of my competitors of the conference talk. It's not just competing with conference talks at other conferences, but it's competing with YouTube videos, competing with local meetups, competing even with books. I could just get the latest Rosenfeld book and read that for like Rosenfeld books, nice little $48 something other price tag on there, but way cheaper than going to a conference. So then what I can do is say, if this is the job rec, if this is like what the hiring manager is really looking for and all the things that they might hire, how can my conference talks just blow it out of the water and be the obvious choice to get hired? And then I can really start thinking, now it's part of the process. I can be like, how do we like differentiate our conference talks? If like the new ideas, do we really want to make sure that like it's really cutting edge? Do we really want to make sure that there's a lot of interactivity with the speaker? And we promote that like there's going to be Q&A after every single conference talk. And maybe even before every conference talk, we're going to have like a question prompt. And then we're going to have round tables afterward with small group sessions so that it's like, this is not a YouTube video. This is not a book. This is actually fulfilling the job description better than any of the other competitors. So I think it just helps you think out of the box when it comes to who are the competitors. It's not just other conferences, right?
Oh, yeah. And this ties into like, okay, so say early on, you do this activity, you think through all of this with your team, then it would that's giving me so many more questions to ask in research. Like, okay, well, are these the only competitors I know? What about a conference talk? What are the variations of a conference talk? Like you said, should there be a roundtable? Is that really differentiating it enough from a YouTube video or a book? Because you get that like one, like collaboration aspect. So like what's making it unique? But then going back to like, okay, well, what also is the negative of it? Honestly, like, well, why would I want to just read a book at home? Well, because I want to stay in my cozy house. I don't want to talk to people or something, like looking at those pros and cons and like your audience, would they really like a book better than is there like a supplemental book you can suggest, in addition to your conference? I don't know,
right.
What could that look like? Materials resources you share because that's important to them depending on.
And that goes back to the research and questioning your assumptions. Like, do you actually know the job rec? We can say like, I can just assume, and that is a total assumption that like people are going to my conference to get cutting edge insights on this industry and to connect with others. That's an assumption. What do they actually, if we think about another object within the conference, the speakers, what is the job that I hire a speaker? Right? Is it like when I think about going to a conference, I think, okay, the speakers, it is a networking thing. Like I want to connect with the speakers, right? It is also an expansion thing for me of
Ooh,
like,
like
especially
say
when
more.
I wasn't a speaker and I was going to conferences, it was like, ooh, that could be me. So it
Oh,
was like that. It was an inspiration of like, oh, like that person's like my age and a woman and she's up on stage too. So it was like opening up the possibilities for me and to be there and see them and then talk to them and be like, oh, they're just normal people. Like I could
uh-huh.
totally do that too. But I don't know if that's true for everybody. That's totally an assumption. So it can get us out of our assumptions and recognize like, actually, like what is our audience hoping from the speakers? Are they hoping for direct content? Are they hoping for more inspiration?
Yeah.
Do they want to know the process of how this person became a speaker? Then I can say I can actually change. This gets into the literally the attributes of a speaker for our conference, the structure of a speaker.
Ooh,
Right now, if I do find out through research that like inspiration is a big part of it, they're looking like people are looking to be like, okay, how do I level up in my career? How do I do that? Maybe there's like special happy hour with like, or a panel or something about how I
yeah.
became a speaker. Or in their dossier, even, there's a
Uh-huh.
little section of like, give us a little bit of your story. And it's just 3 to 4 sentences that like humanizes them a little bit more.
Well, like I'm almost imagining like, okay, I know conferences usually have websites, but I've been seeing more like apps for especially like big conferences. How cool would it be like, you get a little message or something and it's like, here are three things about the speaker, how they got into this, and you can learn more. Like that is again some content that is
Mm-hmm.
on the speaker object in
Yeah.
this whatever product it is, but we know that's important. So we'd want to surface that up to the hiring
Yeah.
manager or attendees. Yeah.
So I'm speaking at a conference, the ITX conference, this in Rochester, New York, this summer, and in my contract, it is like part of the contract that I am there the whole time and I'm available. I am
Wow.
not like it is in my contract that I'm not dipping in and out for my workshop. That like
And why
I'm
do you
at
think
the,
they
I
did that?
actually like have to come to the happy hour. I think like
Uh-huh,
it's like in,
uh-huh.
and I don't know yet if they're advertised that. But like that is
Okay.
something to understand. Like if they were like, okay, speakers, like people want to interact with the speakers and they don't want the type of speakers at this conference that are just like fly in, fly out, peace.
Yes.
I'm
Well, I'm
not
sure
going to
they
be around.
experienced that. And so
Yeah.
they're like, okay, we gotta make sure they stay because that's what's important to attendees.
Hmm. And even, and then we can think about from our marketing perspective, not only just like, yes, that is a thing, like that the speakers are going to be here because of the job. Like my job as a speaker coming into as a instance of a speaker object at this conference, my job is not just to deliver the talk. My job is to be there, to network, to add, color all the way through the experience.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're advertising that though. And I don't know if there any research came from it, but that's just an example of like how the structure of your conference and the structure of a speaker might change thinking this way about like, what is the job of a speaker? Is it just to speak or is it
Yeah.
something beyond that? Is that what the hiring manager of your conference attendees versus this other valuable thing of like, but what I don't think quite is actually what Clayton Christensen originally thought of jobs to be done as this other thing of like the user is the job performer and here's all the things that they have to do and have to get in line to go to a conference. I think we could get some really
Yes.
interesting stuff from thinking about the jobs of our objects.
I love it. I mean, while you've been talking, I hold on. You know me, I'm a visual person. I just want to show you
You've just been doing
while
this
you've
while we've
been
been
talking.
talking.
Because you know what? I realized to process information, I need to sketch it out. So
Gorgeous. That's
when you
probably true for
said,
some of our
yes,
viewers. Say
but
thank
okay,
you
the
below to
hiring
Allie.
manager, hiring manager, the attendee, here are some of the objects we've talked about.
Hmm.
The job recommendation, what an attendee is looking for, learn new skills, share ideas. I mean, exactly what we talked through, getting at the competitors, but I'm starting to picture, um, again, like adding in the job recommendation and competitors to this, like
Hmm.
a little matrix that you can start to build out and just brainstorm together of what are your objects. I mean, I didn't even add in here attributes, but going through and just thinking out loud and, jotting this down is step one. And I think
Hmm.
just a really easy and insightful way to connect these two.
Yeah, I could totally see a matrix. This is something that can also go into the object guide for if you're doing OOUX, like we have a whole place where we have the purpose of the object. And we've been informally being like, you can just stick jobs to be done right here. But like this, I think takes it to the next level to even have another section in your object guide that's like, what are the competitors? What competes with this object? It's probably not just like events on other platforms. It's completely other things.
Other
like
objects
what are
there,
your
yeah.
bananas?
Yes.
you got a milkshake. What are your bananas? What are your donuts?
What's the banana? Wait, the banana to your milkshake is what I want this to be called in our object guides.
Yes. What is the banana to your milkshake? That's like, well, it's healthier, right?
All right. I'm excited for this. I want to try this out on my next project. If you are using jobs to be done, if you're using OUX, please let us know. Use this. Try it out with your teams. Excited to hear, and just keep kind of iterating and growing these collaborations with OUX. So let us know.
Awesome. I think putting and mashing them up together makes both of them even more useful. OOUX with jobs to be done. Amazing. And then maybe jobs to be done with some OOUX also makes jobs to be done way more powerful.
Also, if you have an idea of what else you would want to see mashed up with OUX, I like this little kind of dissection we're doing. So maybe we'll do more of these. Just talking through.
Yeah. So, OOUX, we did it again. We OOUX to jobs to be done. And cheers, everybody. Happy OOUXing and
time.
JTBDing.
Bye.